Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light. Welcome to the Connecting with Coincidence radio show with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, bringing together the world's synchronicity experts to help you use meaningful coincidences to develop spiritually, psychologically, and practically. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence into your web browser to find the book, website, Psychology Today blog, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. And now, here is the host of the Connecting with Coincidence radio show, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD.
Welcome to CC with BB. Yes, I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and this is Connecting with Coincidence. I'm very happy to report that the first meeting of the International Serendipity Society took place in London on September 4th and 5th, and I was there. I was thrilled. A group of mostly academics from mostly Europe talked about research into serendipity. Well, what is serendipity? That was a major question. It starts off with saying happy accidents. Oh, yeah, happy accidents. The definition for them was based on three qualities: surprising or unexpected, sagacity. And sagacity means that the person who is noticing the coincidence has the experience of noticing something novel and possibly useful, and does it in an accidental way. Yes, happy accidents. But accidental sounds like random. And further discussion showed that many serendipities take place in social settings that predispose to their creation. There is work to be done to define serendipity more clearly, and my definitions of coincidence can help sharpen that definition. One of the key themes emerging from the meeting was that major discoveries seemingly happening by accident are, as I mentioned, the product of social forces interacting with the person making that discovery. Also, not all serendipities are happy for everyone. The accidental discovery of copper and gold on a mountaintop in Papua New Guinea benefited the mining company and was a tragedy for the people living there. The mountain has since disappeared. The Serendipity Society will meet in Paris next year. So meet me in Paris next year. If you want to join the proceedings, you can look up Serendipity Society, put it in your search engine, and see what's happening. Our guest today is Frankie Fihn. an international speaker, entrepreneur, and master of the mystical arts. He has been featured in magazines, radio shows, and podcasts. He considers himself to be a real-life Jedi and shaman. He is sensitive to energy vibration and knows how to use spirit, sound, and plants as medicine. Frankie helps people to find their life purpose using these sacred plants and to release their fears, frustration, and self-sabotage to bring more color, vibrance, and meaningful connections to their lives. Welcome to the show, Frankie.
Dr. Bernie, it's really amazing because I can't think of anything cooler than to study the topic of synchronicity. So thank you for doing this whole show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's I'm glad you like it. It's really fun, and being able to see more people as I did in London a couple of weeks ago, studying a version of coincidences is delight for me, and to see more interest developing, I think, around the world. What is your interest in synchronicity? How did you get into it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly it's a really crazy story. My experience is very personal, firsthand, if you want to call it that. And what happened for me was, in many ways, kind of like a Alice going down the rabbit hole in so many different ways into a world I couldn't have imagined existed. And it really started, I, like you, was just studying this topic of synchronicities and what are these things that happen. And I remember at some point I heard a speaker mention something about a plant called ayahuasca, which has since kind of become very mainstream. But back then there weren't many people talking about it. And what ended up happening is I decided to try this stuff. And it was a very interesting thing for me because I'd grown up with two alcoholic parents. I was very anti-substance or anything like that. And I ended up having an experience on it that wasn't really actually noteworthy and significant at the time, but the very next day when I was, in my normal kind of sober, natural state, I started to see the same synchronicity over again, and it just started to happen in so many weird places. And it was such a weird time, too, because I can remember those 2 years that if I walked by a clock, there was a 99% chance it was either 11:11, 1:11, 1:2:3:4, 2:22, 3:33, 4:44, but not some it was never 5:22 or 7:17. It was always a very specific set of numbers. And this started to just grow into this massive synchronicity in my life. I can actually remember some of the more weird ones. Like I turned on a hockey game, and I would turn it on, and at the moment it would be tied 1-1 in the first period with 11:11 to go. And it just didn't matter. It seemed to find me over and over. And I repeatedly experienced the same sort of blue butterfly synchronicity for 2 years, which for me showed up in so many ways. I think the most interesting of them, and mind you, this was happening, Bernie, probably 15 to 20 times a day, every day without fail. So it was just beyond anything that I could at least experientially measure as, oh, that's just a coincidence. Because it was just the repeated same sign over and over and over and over.
It's important to me as I study coincidences is to be more specific about what you were seeing. From what I heard at the beginning was there were variations mostly on multiples of 111. Or 4-1, so 22, 33, 44, I think you were saying. But yeah. Then there was 1, 2, 3, 4 in there too. And that's a different set of numbers in the sense that they're not multiples of the 1111s. So yeah. There's an old saying that a stopped clock is right twice a day if it's a 12-hour clock. So the likelihood of seeing some of these numbers is not that low. There's something more than I'm getting here about the numbers, and then the blue butterflies needs more explanation too. But seeing them, but the hockey example is illustrating what you're talking about.
Yeah, and okay, and interestingly enough, I remember firsthand, actually, even though it was happening to me and it was so frequent, I remember kind of being very skeptical. And for example, started thinking, well, it must just be me noticing these clocks. And then I would start to notice them at the wrong times. And as well, I would get suddenly like a barrage. Sometimes I would get like 11 emails in a day at exactly all came in at 11:11. So somehow at 11:11, 11 people decided to think of me in that moment enough to hit send on their computer. That actually happened multiple days.
Now that's a good. Now you're getting into the weird stuff. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, like I said, had it not happened to me firsthand, I almost wouldn't have believed it myself. The blue butterfly.
Yeah, go ahead, because it's the specifics that are very important. I'm writing a brief essay now about how to tell a coincidence story, and the most important thing are the details of the story itself. And not so much the context; they're secondarily important. But the example you just gave of 11 people at 11:11, that's great. So go ahead with the butterfly one.
Yeah, I mean, it really just started to show up in so many ways. And to give you an example, like, I became obviously interested in this topic, and somebody said, "Hey, you should go listen to this Terrence McKenna guy."
Yeah.
And I went to go to YouTube to watch one video out of curiosity, and he was wearing a blue butterfly T-shirt in the video, and I checked the time, and it was 11:11. So that was like an example of what was going on in my reality at the time. Or I can remember going on Amazon, and my business and my trade was marketing, and so I was looking at like top books on Amazon for marketing, and somehow Amazon had recommended a book that said something like it was either Life After Death. It was a book about near-death experiences, and I clicked on it because it just really pulled my curiosity. And the cover itself was a blue butterfly, and I would look down at the clock, and it would be 11:11 or 1:11. I can't remember actually which one that was.
Is it mostly? It's mostly ones that you are referring to now, although there were other numbers too.
Yeah. Because at that time, like whenever I would just say, for example, like because I worked from home from a laptop, it wasn't really necessary for me to watch the clock like normally.
It's right there. It's right there. Yeah. And
when I would get up to go to the bathroom, for example, I would walk by and I would only see a clock on the oven, and I would notice that I would have gone at 1:11 or 2:22 or 3:33 or something like that.
And the ayahuasca experience somehow began all this. What was you said it was a relatively minor coincidence during the ayahuasca, but what was it? It was about numbers then?
Actually, it was strange. It was the first time I had ever had like one of those kind of, altered substance kind of experiences. And I remember at the time, the only way I could describe it, it felt like something like kind of physically took over my body, and my hand lunged down and it grabbed this Kleenex box that had been sitting there on the ground, and then very quickly pulled it about an inch from my face, and then it just stopped for a second, which was a really strange experience.
It is.
And I remember pushing it aside, and I remember the thought I was thinking in my head is at the time I had read all these really interesting healing experiences about this substance, and for me, none of that was happening. So I remember going, where's my healing experience?
We're coming to the end of this segment. You're listening to Connect with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Buttman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Frankie Fihn.
I loved him, like no one else I've ever.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Path Home Shamanic Art School proudly presents the Gathering of Shaman 2019 Fall Retreat, Manifestation Samhain. Join me, certified shamanic instructor Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magnificent Colorado Mountains this November 2nd and 3rd for a life-changing event. Participate in unique teachings and ceremonies that'll put the power and magic of shamanic manifestation into your hands. Sit in circle with like-minded individuals, sharing group energy and the power it generates. Classes will be held in a facility next to the beautiful, majestic Arkansas River, further empowering the experience. Space is limited, so reserve your spot today. For more information, visit findyourpathhome.com or email touchin@findyourpathhome.com.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere. Just as we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide.
Well, welcome back to CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Our guest is Frankie Fihn, and we were talking about his ayahuasca experience and somehow watching his hand move a tissue box. Would you tell us a little bit more about what happened after that, Frankie?
Yeah, and just to recap again, I understand it's a bizarre story. Hearing it, understand that it was also a very bizarre experience for me at the time, firsthand experiencing it. And but yeah, it was as if something had kind of physically taken over my body at that point. And this happened actually 5 times in a row. And I finally decided to look in this Kleenex box, and it actually had the words written by the Kleenex company of dreams and inspirations. And the only way I could kind of describe it is for me and my experience then, they started to become glimmery and 3-dimensional, and they literally floated out kind of into me. And as that happened, I just embodied the feeling and felt really dreamy and inspiring. So I looked into this Kleenex box, and it became itself kind of 3-dimensional. And so it was printed in 2D. It had kind of a universe or a galaxy pattern on it, but it started to expand itself, and I could see this kind of whole universe in my Kleenex box. And in the very bottom left of the Kleenex box was a blue butterfly, which wasn't at the time super important. But like I said, the next day in a very normal sober state, I started to experience that same synchronicity over and over, and 15 to 20 times a day, just on the regular, I would see this same sign in a million different forms.
The butterfly, the blue butterfly. Well, that's a pretty dramatic set of experiences, and it's particularly the sequence kept going on, both with numbers and the blue butterfly. The kind of work you do is helping people somehow, and in the ways that I described in the introduction, how did this experience influence your healing work?
Yeah, it's almost funny saying that now when I look back at that, because, thinking about that in that time, I was in a very serious kind of office corporate-y kind of marketing setting. And so, looking back and never in a million years could you have told me this was my career path. And what had happened for me was these synchronicities in their 2-year persistence. And just one more, because you liked specifics. I can remember this was one of the more meaningful ones for me at the time. My girlfriend came home and said, "Hey, I know as a kid you really liked this Zelda game." It was a video game I played as a kid, and they had come out with a new version. And I hadn't played games in a long time, but she's like, "I know you're really going to like it, so I bought it for you." And I opened the game to go play it, and it's kind of this, you're like saving a princess, medieval times kind of game. And in the game, they would have these meadows, and in a circle, there would be blue butterflies floating in a circle. And I remember thinking, oh, here we go, more blue butterflies. And eventually what happens in the game is the princess gets knocked out, and you get knocked out in the process, and you wake up, and there's this like kind of spirit floating over you in the game and says, you have to really follow me. And she teaches you this kind of sacred song and then says, go and use it where the blue butterflies gather. And you go on these spiritual journey. And there were like vortex points within the game. That's like the story of the game. But it also kind of really mirrors what happened to me in real life, because after 2 years, I decided to just Google. Like I didn't really have a way to explain what was happening to me. And I just Googled blue butterfly ayahuasca. And there was a retreat in Peru with that name and that symbol. And, I decided to go down there, and it led to my first kind of, I would call it a mystical experience. I don't know what the proper label for it is, but like, a near death or kind of afterlife thing. And it really, from that point forward, forever changed how I really saw life and this universe. And I think what really changed was I, just like your amazing work, Bernie, is I realized how important it is for people to really discover their purpose and live it and make this world a better place. Like there's, what I feel is a certain moral responsibility to live that. So that's kind of how that whole journey took shape, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I fully agree with your conclusion. Yeah, the journey is pretty clear, but the conclusion is very clear. And how can synchronicity help people discover their life purposes?
Well, I can tell you definitely from my firsthand experience, there was 0% chance I ever would have stepped into it and lived it for a number of reasons. One is I just had no idea what it actually was. And I didn't know that there was a way to find it. And furthermore, I didn't realize, that synchronicities are not only our way to find it, but I really think they're the way. And when you really start to notice them, I think you wake up to, a greater truth, because it really trains you to be aware of things, not just externally, but internally as well. And you start to notice where your life feels purposeful and where it doesn't. And you can start to make like intentional decisions about how to do it. And I think it just, for a lot of people, they're kind of afraid to just follow where those signs and symbols are leading them, because it represents such a big change from where you're at. Especially like, I know for me, I thought, I had a good corporate gig. I didn't want to give that up. But it was also making me miserable at the time. And so I know a lot of people probably feel that same way. And the synchronicities are really guiding you to the way out. And so they can be a tremendous, tremendous teacher in my experience.
I like the way you say make you more tuned in, more sensitive, not only to what's around you, but what's in you. And that's true. The finding out what your life purpose is through them is still something I'd like to hear you talk more about, because I think that's true, and I'm trying to be able to clarify in my writing is how can synchronicities help with spiritual and psychological unfolding, not just spiritual, but psychological. A lot of people get caught up in the spiritual and don't pay attention to what sometimes is even harder, is how to get along with each other, how to be able to manage relationships well, how to be part of a relationship well. And I think coincidences can help with that as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question of it. If I had to say for me how they really made that connection is I think before you really start to notice those coincidences and those synchronicities that are happening around you, is that you kind of like can exist in life in your own little bubble, and in a way that's very like, at least for me, represented a very, very selfish reality where the only person I really cared about was myself. The only person I thought about was myself. I wanted to make a difference in the world, but I, wasn't actually actively doing anything to do that at the time. And when I took these synchronicities, if nothing else, it showed me an unalienable truth of life, which is that we're all going to die at some point. And so, in many ways, like, the experience I had really brought me to the brink of what I thought this experience of death was. And that's why I say it's, kind of like a near-death experience. And through it, you realize that you don't have this infinite amount of time to, in this life that you are, to just do what you want to do. And I really thought, for me personally, do I want to spend my life doing something I hate, not really enjoying it, with people that don't really represent me, and doing work I don't really care about, and making little difference on the world? And it suddenly made me really ask hard questions to myself that I had been avoiding for a really, really long time. And in many ways, those hard questions that most people avoid like the plague are actually the most liberating things in your entire life, that I find, because they bring you to, understanding who you really are and what you really want. And because of it, when you really connect with that, and those synchronicities lead you into that, what I find, at least for me personally, was that you become a bigger thinker than just yourself, and your life purpose inevitably intertwines with the people you're most meant to influence and to help, and so forth. And I think it really just makes you more selfless in a deeper way.
I think so too. And if you really follow the inner-outer thing, that you pay more attention to inner and outer, you begin to see they're much more related, that the separation between inside and outside isn't as great as we think, that our minds are immersed in what I call our mental atmosphere, or the psychosphere. And in this psychosphere, our minds are much more fluidly interacting with other minds, and we begin to feel and experience and know that we are part of something together. Finding the other people who feel that way and think that way is becoming a challenge for me. And I'm trying to be able to use markers to say, this person is probably where I am, in a way that we can then join together and find other people, because this has to be done collectively. We are not individuals anymore. We are part of something greater. And it's not just the way it's talked about in the newspapers. It's our minds are much more connected than we realize, and if we form intentions together, we can create new realities.
I couldn't have said that better myself, Bernie. You're amazing.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. We're coming to the end of the segment, and I very much appreciate your appreciation of what we're doing here. So we've come to the end of this segment, and you've been listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Frankie Fihn.
Telepathically, without being in the same room. Whoa, I loved him. I've ever loved in my life.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Synchronicity sisters, emotional twins, each suffering from abusive men and needing to break away. Synchronicity sisters, emotional twins, a one but right phone number dialed, put them together through similarity.
Welcome back to CC with BB. Yes, I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and we are talking with Frankie Fihn, who's gone from corporate marketing to, well, we're going to find out a little bit more, from recognizing his own death is going to happen, as with the rest of us, to looking at his life in a different way, to helping people find their purposes in life. And why in the world, or why does the world speak to you more than to other people, Frankie?
Bernie, that is a super, super deep question. And to be honest, can I share with you kind of a little bit of an embarrassing story, but it's a true story?
We love those. Go ahead.
My girlfriend and I, we were in Montreal, and one of the things I wanted to notice was just how aware other people were. And we were kind of, we were having sex, to be honest with you, Bernie. And we decided to go by the window and wondered just who would see us. Now, where we lived in Montreal, it was a busy university area, and so literally every 5 to 10 seconds somebody new walks by. So there's like no shortage of people, and our first thought was somebody was going to see us almost instantaneously. And after 10 minutes, what we noticed is that nobody had noticed us, not one person. And by then we were actually a little bit disappointed, and it wasn't until somebody stopped at a stoplight right in front of our house, and they were looking around for a minute, and they eventually saw us and then pointed out the window and laughed and waved at us. And it was a really strange thing. But what I realized through that experience was that most people don't notice what's happening in and around them. And I think, one of the reasons that the world speaks to, people like us more is because we've cultivated awareness to actually notice what's happening around us. And if you look at most people when they walk through the park, you can almost see the blinders of their thoughts on when they stare at the ground or their phone or something that has like their 100%, captivated attention in many ways. Like you see so many people today where their whole world exists in a 4-inch by 2-inch screen, and they're unable to notice anything outside of that screen. And so I think it's an amazing thing for anybody when they start to really open up their awareness and to really just see life as it's really happening, because you may just find that there's some really interesting things happening around you already, including the people having sex in the window you walked by and just never saw.
Very good. Very, very good. I go to dance 2 or 3 times a week or 4 times, and I do a lot of noticing at dance, and I notice how little people notice in a way that they remember. They may notice and respond, almost like the tissue box. you were describing that something else moved you. They move without knowing why they're moving, or even that they're moving. They move away, move together. Things happen, glances, looks, just dancing, and they don't even remember sometimes dancing with me, and it's the way I do it. I remember dancing with them, and there's a certain different awareness that you're just describing that I see more clearly at dance than I do in the world. But I was at Best Buy the other day getting a new phone, and the people working there looked like they were programmed. They were programmed for certain behaviors and ways of talking, and that was where they were stuck. And that made me look more and more at how people are somewhat robotic in the sense that the culture programs them for how to behave as the institution programmed them at Best Buy. And what we're talking about is like sneaking a look above this way of behaving and saying, what is going on here? What are they not paying attention to that they could be paying attention to? Can maybe I help them through coincidence? That's what I'm doing. Through coincidence study, through curiosity about coincidences, see the way you're talking about, see what else is going around.
Yeah, totally. And as well, Bernie, I mean, for anybody listening to this, if you want to try just a really simple experiment that I developed for myself is whenever you ask somebody how they're doing today, almost inevitably will you get a programmed response, good, not bad, something to that effect. And what I found that really helps to break somebody's program is to pause for a second and ask the exact same question a second time. Go, no, really, how are you actually doing? And I find when I do that, you get the funniest answers from people. Last time I was in Canada, I was at grocery store, and the lady said, "Oh my God, I can't wait for my shift to be over. My boss is a maniac. She's breathing down my neck all day. I can feel the breeze over there. My back hurts from standing. I'm so close to being done. How are you?"
Well, the reason for that is that your question of how you're doing today is also a programmed cultural thing, or at least looks like it. But when you ask the second time, then you're breaking the pattern, and then you're bursting into where they're really thinking, because you're showing that you're really interested.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what they want. I was doing a different thing, saying, "What are you up to?" is what I use, just because that's not a usual way of greeting people. It's saying, what are you up to, is more about what they're going to do, not what you got, which is how are they experiencing the world. But I get curious about what are you doing? What are you doing? But you, Frankie, or me, Bernie, has to like be interested and open and have the time to listen to the answer to that question.
Yeah, and I think, if you are genuinely curious as a human being, and you're the kind of person listening to something like this, and you're paying attention to the synchronicities around you, then you probably do genuinely want to know the answer.
And you have the time to listen to it.
Yeah.
And the capacity. I'm a psychotherapist too, so I have a limited capacity to listen. And sometimes I'm better at it than others. So those are all personal variables. But that aside, I really appreciate your question, and I hope our audience will ask how are you doing, how are you today, a second time, and see what happens with the people they ask that.
It really is amazing.
When I did send out questions to you, a question about what questions to ask you, and I really am curious about why the world speaks to you more than other people. And your answer was because you're more aware of what's going on around you. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that the best thing that somebody can do for themselves in really creating a life that's purposeful is becoming more aware, because what you'll start to do is like you said, Bernie, is why do I have to just repeat the question, how are you doing? And you say fine, and then I say, how are you? And I say fine, and then we do the amount at the register and say goodbye. It's like, why can't we do something different in this interaction than what we have to do? And I think one of the things that we've helped our clients do more than anything is to get really clear about stepping back and what you want your life to look like in all of those areas. And it's really amazing when I see people, because a lot of the people we work with really like to travel the world, for example. And so every time I get a message from them, they're in some new country doing some new exciting thing. And it's a total like unending source of inspiration for me to get that. And all that begins with, them just becoming more aware. So, like, yes, Bernie, I like to think of myself as, probably more aware than the average person. But, I think it's really something anybody can cultivate for themselves. It's not like a super secret power that I have that other people don't. And I think, one of the things that we're blessed to be able to do is to help other people wake this up within themselves so that they stop just saying good when they're not really good, and they stop doing the same job if it's not really fun to do the same job, and they stop dating the person if they don't really want to be dating them, and they stop making money in a way that makes them unhappy, and they start making more of it and with people they enjoy more, and because, why not? It's your life.
Right.
And all of that is kind of like awareness is the beginning seed of all of that.
Well, why don't you're in Germany. Where in Germany?
Right now I'm in a little town called Saarbrücken, which is right near the French border, and it's about an hour away from my mother and father-in-law, which is like the perfect distance. They have to call before they can visit, but they still get to see our amazing daughter.
And so near Alsace-Lorraine, then, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just there yesterday, or 2 days ago.
And my maternal grandparents were married in Alsace-Lorraine, and I was just in Frankfurt. So, don't you have what I feel is kind of a retreat somewhere in Germany that you do?
Yeah, so we actually do. They're for a specific kind of person, I guess I should say, because I'm not one of these people that thinks like psychedelics are going to save the world and everybody should do them. I think they're for some people and not for others.
Yeah.
And I think if you feel called to it and it feels right for you, you just kind of know it. It'll be a super curious and interesting subject. And one of the things that we help people do on these psychedelic retreats, which is really to build kind of laptop-based businesses over these things, while also kind of in many ways using these synchronicities to guide you and being very intentional about that. The retreats are actually in the Netherlands. It's nearby here, and I think it's kind of an important thing. The laws are 100% legal for everything we do.
Well, we're coming to the end of this segment, and I would like to begin the next one talking in more depth about how you use psychedelics and synchronicity to help people and to go where as part of my question. So you're listening to Connecting with Coincidence. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Our guest is Frankie Fihn.
Seem to be able to communicate telepathically without being in the same room. Whoa, whoa.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, The 70-Year Cover-Up Exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now to receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Welcome back to CCBB, and we are talking with Frankie Fihn, and Frankie is telling us about his retreats that he runs in the Netherlands using psychedelics, synchronicity, and other things, diet and exercise, I'm sure, and meditation to be able to help people find their life purpose. And I'd like to get more specific about what you're doing there, Frankie, and how synchronicity fits in.
Liberated from your fear of public speaking.
Well, I think, Bernie, to be honest, like the psychedelic work for me has been the very catalyst of the synchronicities in my life. And I actually had I can remember an experience back in the day where, in this visionary state, I'd become like almost, I want to say, like a wave rather than like a physical existence. And I felt at least in this visionary state, like a very abstract kind of non-physical being. And I remember realizing at some point that I would, feel normal again, and I would be, in an everyday state. And I remember being afraid that this greater reality would disappear from me, and I would feel very cut off, and I would feel very scared. And so I started to intend within my mind for all these synchronicities to appear in my life. And it was very, very interesting because in that state, it took the elapsing of some time, but those experiences actually started to come true for me. And I actually then began to start to create synchronicities for myself rather than just feeling like life was, grabbing my attention constantly. And I guess the retreat started for two reasons. Is one,
just wait a second. That you were able, in a psychedelic state, when you were feeling like you were a wave, to be able to intentionally create synchronicities, which I assume were there to remind you of that wave state.
Correct.
That's a very, very important thing you're saying right there, that you were able to create the potential, I'll say at that moment, for synchronicities to happen. Tell us more about how you think that worked.
Well, to be honest, and I'm just sharing my personal experience. I'm not like telling anybody listening to this is like the way you have to see it. But speaking from my personal experience, I experienced what I would call like a oneness experience, and I woke up to this reality that there's this infinite creator behind it that is kind of like, in many ways, if you want to call it that, how I would describe it anyway, is like it's a giant puppet show and God is playing all the parts. And in this sort of infinite feeling state, I felt like I could just do anything, and there wasn't even an opposite to me trying to do something in my life. And I contrasted it to that, to my very human experience, where I felt scared a lot of the time. Life seemed bigger than me. And I didn't, most of the time, had no idea what I was doing. And I remember just thinking, but in this infinite state, I really wish I could hang on to this all the time. And so I remember in my visionary state, I could see what I just would describe as like every kind of subatomic particle of existence. And I started putting little synchronicities in my mind into it in like my imaginary states, so that I would never be separate from those, and I could always call on them whenever I wanted. And what happened, and like I said, when I was in a very normal state, when
you say you put in little synchronicities, give us an example.
So I literally saw like an electron, and I remember looking at it, and it looked like kind of like a vibrating kind of bubble. And in my visionary state, I thought of a blue butterfly, and I sent a blue butterfly into that subatomic particle. And when I realized that it would, it was just, for me, it was just a reminder of this state of consciousness.
Yeah. And so when you'd see blue butterflies, it would remind you of the state of consciousness.
Exactly. And then I remember thinking, I wanted to do that with everything. And so all these kind of blue butterflies went in my mind until they were in everything. And then it was like there was never a place where I could go where I was cut off from that. If I wanted to find it, it was in anything and everything.
That is really cool. That is really cool. And I want to go on to what you do, but I also like to suggest that you look up Serendipity Society, put it in your put it in your search engine, and maybe come to the meeting in Paris next year. I don't know when it is.
You got it.
I think you'd find it entertaining. They're much more, they're academic and not so experiential, but it's an important part of the movement, is to be able to have people in academics doing the research that validates some of the ideas that we're talking about. They're lower level, but they're building a base for a larger acceptance of the ideas that we're talking about.
I 1,000% agree, Bernie.
Good. Serendipity Society. And anybody listening, put it in your search engine and see if you want to at least come to the meeting in Paris sometime next year. So tell us then about what you do at the retreat in the Netherlands using psychedelics.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie, it's really a combination of two things. Like, I went through probably a 2-year period after this first kind of like mystical near-deathy experience, realizing, an unalienable truth, as I mentioned, that we're all going to die someday. And what I started thinking about was like, what did I want it to say on my tombstone? And that's how you're like close to your life purpose, when you're thinking about like, what's it going to say after I'm gone? And I remember thinking like, what were the things that most changed my life for the better, and positively transformational ways, where I really just, experienced life where so many of the problems I struggled with for a long time went away. And for me personally, that was an anxiety and, different business struggles I had going on at the time, and just being able to be free in life. Like I felt always chained to some kind of like job or source of income. And the two biggest things that helped me were my psychedelic journeys and experiences in like high level mastermind groups, which if you've never read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, you should. It's the business people as a whole said it's the number one most influential book that's ever affected them. The highest number of people have said that. And one of the things he suggested is a mastermind. And I experienced this firsthand, where I was just, honestly, I lucked into it. I was in Las Vegas in America, and there was a high level mastermind where all the top lawyers in different states were meeting, and they were sharing ideas with each other. And I just happened to get an invite to go in there for a minute. And I think in the first hour, having known nothing before, I knew how to create a winning TV commercial, where to buy the advertising, who to buy it from, what to say, how much to spend, what the return on investment was. And it was just really mind-blowing at how much I knew and was able to do after that. And I decided to combine those into a single theme. So it's really for, we have people who come in basically who, want to A, find their life purpose, and turn a business into it, and C, have an interest in psychedelics. And we really combine those to create an experience for you where you're able to massively upgrade your life. For some people, like I said, a lot of our people use it to travel the world and build kind of laptop businesses. Other people want to make a bigger impact. And so we get a lot of people who speak on stage or finally publish a book that they've been waiting forever to do. And I never know exactly how it's going to affect them because every person's dream is a little bit different. But usually I would say those are the ways that they leave most changed from the work that we do.
Great. I have just finished a book called The Surrender Experiment. You familiar with that one?
Yes, I am.
How does that fit in with what you're talking about?
Is that David Hawkins? His other?
No, it's Michael Singer.
Okay, yeah. It's actually in my Amazon cart right now, but I have not read it yet, so I can't tell you for sure. But it's funny that you mentioned that, Bernie. Just even that topic itself is like, I've read a lot of life-changing books now at this point, and even that, there was a time where I used to try and figure out what the best books are, and now a principle to how powerful this is I just now go to the people who are achieve the most, are the most inspiring, are the most self-aware, amazing people that I know, and I say, what books most influenced you? And that's how I came across that book, which is why it's in my next batch of Amazon books. I personally buy like 12 at a time or 20 at a time sometimes.
Wow.
But it's because I get all these amazing book recommendations, and they always come from that kind of principle, which is like the mastermind of just, ask other amazing people what's working for them.
Yeah. Well, we've got another minute and a half left, Frankie. What else would you like to tell us?
Well, if anybody who's listening would like to find out more about this work, and I would say if it's for you, there's probably three things if you're interested in kind of what I discussed about making an impact with kind of a laptop style business, and you have an interest in psychedelics and not just building a business, but obviously the last piece is doing it purposefully, where you're actually bettering the world and you really feel good about what you're doing, and combining that. For a lot of people, that's the biggest challenge they have in their life, and that's kind of what we help people through. We got a free training. You can watch it. It's at sacredplantretreats.com. And, if that sounds like you, obviously you're going to want to check it out.
Well, the Michael Singer book I'm going to end with has taught me to be able to let frustration go, that to not have expectations about things bother me. I should have expectations, but when it doesn't work out, like I didn't know whether we were going to make contact today and with you and me through Skype, but being able to let it go. And I was going to do a description of the Serendipity conference if we didn't do it. So letting things go, I got. But I also learned implicitly, and Singer didn't talk about that, how what you bring into it makes a big difference. And your marketing experiences has helped you a great deal. So we've come to the end of this segment and this show. Frankie, it's been delightful having you on here. Thank you for being with us.
These coincidences